Hello, welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Resi Murphy.
And I'm Sammy Raw. This is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
This week we have Season 1, Episode... Oh, what episode?
7.
Episode 7, The Moth. We are focused on Charlie.
Let's get to it.
As always, we start the show with hot takes, strongest or initial reactions to the episode. Sammy, what's your hot take?
Oh, you don't want to go first?
I don't.
My hot take is about Shannon. So in this episode, when Boone asks her to do the thing with the firework and the transceiver to make sure they can find the signal, I flipped out at Boone. I was like, what kind of stupid shit are you asking Shannon to do this? She's going to screw it up and they're never going to get off the island. And I was so impressed when she didn't. I mean, she almost forgets.
This is kind of damning with faint praise, though.
Yeah.
I was so impressed that she completed this simple task.
Well, I mean, based on what we've seen of Shannon so far, I think it was very reasonable to just assume that she was going to be the death of this mission.
That's fair.
And she wasn't. So go Shannon, I guess.
Okay.
What's your hot take?
My hot take is sort of equally minor. But when Charlie is rescuing Jack from the cave, and Jack happens to have dislocated his shoulder and Charlie needs to pop it back in, I thought back to the conversation we had a couple weeks ago about, like, the occasionally unnecessary medical plot lines. And I was like, why? Like, it's totally rational that Jack could have dislocated his shoulder when this cave collapsed on him. But, like, oh, we're going to do this gross thing where we pop your shoulder back into place.
So I actually thought there was a reason for that being there.
Oh.
I thought it was all about, showing that Charlie could be useful and do things. Because the moment... Because he'd already crawled into the cave, and that was important. But then the moment building up to that was Charlie saying, no, I can't do this. And Jack says, no, you can do this. I know you can do this. And then the whole... we'll talk about Charlie, I guess, now. But it's like, so much of this episode was about him... Well, some of it was about him feeling kind of useless and, like, what was he doing there? So to me, this was a good moment for Charlie, and also kind of harken back to when Kate has to stitch up Jack. Mm-hmm. It was the exact same language. No, you can do this. I believe in you. And so I thought that served a purpose for both characters.
Okay.
But enough about Jack. We talk about Jack all the time.
Yeah. So I am so excited, you guys. We got our first hot take.
Yeah, someone called our number, 954-6-DHARMA, and gave us their hot take on this episode.
So shout out to Chris from Michigan. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hi, guys. This is Chris from the Mittman Station, also known as Michigan. I love the podcast. I'm so grateful that you guys are doing this. It's funny, I just finished watching episode 7, The Moth, in anticipation of the next podcast. Couple things that I thought was really great was Sawyer, being the villainous character. I thought it was interesting that he finally tried to do something, I won't even say noble, just something human in actually letting Kate know about Jack. And when he gets there, they're obviously suspicious of him, and, Kate kind of gives him some shit, but it's assumptions she's making based on Sawyer's own previous actions. So he's kind of created this vicious cycle. And so once she starts to, I don't want to say pick on him, but, basically say, we don't need you or whatever, that he kind of accepts his role as the villain, which, again, was kind of brought on by his own actions. But it was just interesting seeing that come up where he actually tried to do something right. And in the last moments, I almost forgot about the bottle rockets and setting up for the transceiver. And so it was like, oh, great, we'll see if this works. And then when you see all the bottle rockets go up and it's so exciting, and then bam, Syed gets hit. And it's just such an interesting twist. And I remember 99% of me thinking that it was Sawyer and thinking, oh, that's who he is. He is that bad guy.
Thank you, Chris. Chris from the Mittman Station. Big fan of that.
Shout out.
We're here in the Frying Pan Station in Palm Springs, California.
Oklahoma's the frying pan. It's shaped like a frying pan.
I just meant that it's hot here.
The mitten, it's about the shape. It's shaped like a mitten.
Oh.
That's not because it's cold.
Can we cut this all out?
No! Michigan is shaped like a mitten.
Oh, gosh.
And whenever you meet someone from Michigan, they hold up their hand and say, like, I'm from here, and they point at
I didn't know that.
Mitten. Yeah, that's why people do that.
Okay, everyone please quickly forget my dumb joke and not knowing the shape of Michigan, and apparently Oklahoma either. And
jeez.
Oh, gosh.
That's embarrassing. Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So, Sawyer. Yeah, Chris, I think you raised some really good points here. Like, this is, I think, the first time that we try to see Sawyer do something that's objectively good and not self-interested. Mm-hmm. But yeah, then he gets to Kate and Saeed, and they assume that he has bad intentions because they've never had the opportunity to assume anything else, because he has always appeared to have bad intentions.
And I agree with that to an extent. I also don't think it in any way excuses what Sawyer ultimately does here, which is not to tell Kate that Jack's been hurt, go help, even if that's maybe what he intended to do, which I'm still not sure I'm totally convinced by, but it is to basically say, hey, Jack's dead, just so you know.
Yeah, that's deeply shitty of you, Sawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris is also, I think, totally right in that you are totally set up to believe that it's Sawyer who knocks out Saeed at the end.
Which, as we'll get to next week, apparently that's the direction they want us to be thinking in.
Yeah, good setup. Good
Chris,
red herring.
Thank you for the call. We really appreciate it. Please call again, and once more, if you want to hear your thoughts on the show, 954-6-DHARMA. You want to talk about Charlie?
Let's talk about Charlie.
Charlie's like your favorite character, right?
He's among them. So the initial thing I want to say about Charlie is the conversation that he has with John Locke, the spirit guide, in the opening few minutes of the episode, where he says, like, why can't you just destroy the drugs? Why do you have to keep them? Why are you putting me through this thing where I have to come and ask you for it? And John basically says, because you have free will. Or his implication is because you have free will. And since we are reading John as evangelist or John as spirit guide, this, of course, is a very popular explanation in certainly Christian, and I would venture to say Judeo-Christian theology, as to, like, why, God would allow sin into the world and things like this. It's because, like, in order to make a meaningful choice, you have to have a choice. Like, doing good without the choice to do bad is not really doing good. It's just...
Well, that, well, first of all, I'm glad, as always, that one of us knows anything about religion, because I do not. And I like that also just philosophically. I feel like that works even without religion for me. But
yeah.
No, but it makes me think that, in Charlie's flashback, and I'd forgotten most of this flashback, but I'd really forgotten that there was this early scene, before he goes down the heroin road, where he wants to get out of the band, and he goes to the priest and he confesses, and he's like, hey, I slept with a woman I didn't know, and then did it again, and then
the whole thing,
the whole thing. It was. But yeah, Charlie said, I have to quit. And I think he could sort of feel himself sliding down that road that he didn't want to slide down. And he
even
does,
then, yeah.
And he does make a choice, and he says, I don't, and then, his brother talks him out of it. But I think that lines up really well with what you're saying about what happens on the island, where he has this decision, and he, tries to make it well, but ultimately lets the bad influence get in the way.
It's really kind of heartbreaking how, like, Charlie tries to pull this lever, right? Like, Liam has given him this lever where he says, it's okay, we'll stop whenever you say stop. And Charlie tries to. And Liam basically says, like, really?
Yeah. And it's his brother.
It's his big brother.
And I have a brother who I'm very close to, and it was heartbreaking to watch this and to just, see him. And there's this scene at the end where Charlie goes back and tries to bring Liam back into it. And on the one hand, it's nice that Liam is trying to help him at that point, but on the other hand, I totally get where Charlie is coming from at that point of being like,
you owe me this.
Yeah.
Like,
and also, you fucked up my life. Like, I'm not going to take your help. Like, you think that I want your help anymore? I don't know, it's very hard.
Well, because it's implied, right, that the night that Liam refuses to shut it down is the first night Charlie uses.
Well, why do you think he decides to use? Because I agree that that's the first time, and I was giving a little thought to, what is it about Charlie in that moment that leads him to the drugs?
So what does Liam say right before that? He says, like, this is it. This is the end of the rainbow. This is all there is.
Well, not only that, but it's also like, and you're second fiddle to me.
Yeah.
It was so cathartic at the end when he burns the drugs.
Yeah.
Like, I teared up a little watching that. It was quite powerful.
Well, and it's really interesting that John chooses to put him through this. We talked about this a little bit with the free will thing, but, like, what is John doing here? Like,
well, in terms of his motivation, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think he spells it out pretty well with the moth metaphor in terms of what he's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
That he thinks if he just takes the drugs away and forces Charlie to withdraw, he'll not come out, all that much better or stronger for it. But if he has to make the choice, he will.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
But is it, again, and we talked about this last week, is Locke doing this out of the goodness of his heart, that he thinks that, he is serving whatever the island's purpose is, and he's just helping Charlie, or is this, sort of stage 2 of Charlie becomes my acolyte? The one other thing I wanted to say about Charlie is, and maybe this is a little bit embarrassing to say, but oh well, it's only being released to the public as a podcast, so I'll say it. I kind of identified with Charlie feeling like he was useless and couldn't do anything helpful on the island. Because it gets played it's played in the episode, I think, is a little bit silly, like, what good am I to anyone here kind of aspect.
Well, I think it's a combination of that and a combination of, like, he's still recovering from fame. Like,
oh yeah,
he still keeps bringing up, he was in Drive Shaft, he played bass, he wrote that song, like, he still keeps expecting people to recognize him and doesn't seem to quite realize that, like, fame is no good here. He hasn't been a regular member of society for a long time.
That's true.
Like, not that Sawyer and Kate and Saeed and others have, but fame is sort of a very different way to experience the world, and, like, coming out of that, I can imagine, would be quite shocking, not to mention that you're also detoxing.
Right. It's interesting, and it's also just, his brother does that to him. That's what we see in this flashback, right? He wanted to leave the band, he was okay with calling it quits, and then his brother,
pulled him back,
and then
with fame, with the temptation of fame, basically,
and then tells him, this is all you're going to get. This
Yeah.
is the best there is. And so, yeah, you're right. It does kind of seem like Charlie, for him, that's all that he thinks is valuable about him.
Yeah, or he's been led to believe that that's all.
Yeah.
All right, this week we have an exciting interview for you. Sammy sat down via Skype with Neil Hopkins, who played Liam.
I'm here with Neil Hopkins, who played Liam Pace, Charlie's brother on Lost. Neil, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So let's just start at the beginning. Can you tell me how you got cast on the show?
I did it I'm trying to remember everything correctly. Oh, I read for the casting director, April Webster. And this is actually kind of a good story. So the character was British, and it said, only submit British actors or Irish actors. That's what it said on the breakdown. And so I knew I was going to do it British, but before I went in, I made the decision to just go into the room with the casting director as a Brit, because she didn't know, April Webster at that time didn't know who I was, and so I just went in as the character. So she never knew I wasn't British, because as an actor, I do a good British accent, and so it sounds a lot worse if you come in as an American and then switch, because they're going to know you're not really British, and so they'll listen, for all the flaws or whatever. It won't seem convincing, but even if your accent's not that good and you come in as the person, they have no reason in their mind to doubt that that's the way you talk. So I went in that way, and I was kind of nervous because I'd never done it like that, and I was just chatting with them, as this character. And then did the thing, and then I got a call back, and I went and did it, and I was the only American actor that was there. Everybody else was British, and it was kind of nerve-wracking. Like, I felt I'd never done anything like that before in an audition, and so I felt like almost like I was going undercover or something.
Were you like standing around with the other British actors pretending you were also British?
I wasn't really talking to them, but because I was trying to focus, because there was a lot of material. It was a lot of scenes, as you know from the episode, and so I was really trying to stay focused, and I was nervous because I was just like scared that they were going to find out that I was putting them on. Not that it's that big of a deal, but you people could think it's funny, or people could think it's weird. You never know how people would react to something like that, or they might think like you're conning them or something, which of course you are, because you're an actor. So I went in and I did it, and it went really well. And then the funny thing was, one of the producers at the time, who was they later kind of cleaned house on the show, I think after the first season or something, and one of the writer producers was British. And we just started talking. He asked me where I was from, and I had made up this whole backstory just in case it came up in conversation, because I'm like, well, if they start talking to me, like, what? Because sometimes you talk in an audition, and sometimes you just do it and you leave. But they talked, and of course the guy was British, so I was like, holy shit, what am I going to do? And so I just went into it, and I just sat there, and he had no inkling that I wasn't a Brit, and we just kept we talked about being Brits in LA and all this stuff. It was funny. It was really funny.
Did you have to use any of your fake backstory?
Yeah, well, he asked me where I was from, and I can't even remember where I said it. I think I said I was from Leicester or something like that, which was actually a really bad choice because the Leicester accents are very, very different than the one I was doing. I was doing kind of just like a London accent, or my version of a London accent. But it didn't. I don't know. It didn't. Maybe he knew. I don't know, but he didn't say anything. Anyways, so that was it. I went in and I did the audition, and Lost, mind you, was not a show yet, so it wasn't,
This was before it had even gone on the air?
Oh, well, yeah, this was before. It didn't air until, September?
Yeah.
And so my episode didn't air till November, and this was in August. This was in, late August of 2004. So the show, I saw billboards for the show all over the place. Driving around LA, you could see them on bench ads and bus ads, and you could tell it was going to be a big show. But this was the beginning of the time where they were just canceling shows after one episode. So you never knew what was going to be a big hit and what wasn't. Nobody knows, and they still don't know. But so I knew it was a big thing. I knew they were putting a lot of money behind it. I knew it was J.J. Abrams, Yeah. So that was the story behind my audition. It was kind of funny.
So let's talk about, obviously you get the role, you play Liam, and, so let's talk about some of the stuff a little bit. I was rewatching The Moth, the first episode, the first Charlie flashback, the first one you appear in last night, and I really love the sort of the first impression you make, where there's this scene, Charlie is in the confessional booth, and he's confessing that he just had this threesome, and he wants to quit the band, and everything's terrible, and it's very religious, and then he comes out, and you're sitting in the pews, and you've got your feet up, and you're wearing a shirt I just noticed for the first time that says "Music Slut." Mm-hmm. It's a pretty fun first impression. Can you tell me a little bit about just sort of what kind of idea you had about this character going in, and what his relationship was with Charlie, and how they were going to be different?
Well, it was clear I'm a big Brit pop fan, and so I was a big Oasis fan, and it was clear that they were based on Oasis because his name's Liam, like Liam Gallagher and Noel Gallagher, and they were two brothers. They were from a very humble working class background, and they ended up, becoming these rock superstars, but they never got along, and they were always fighting, and it ended up sort of tearing the band apart. So I could tell that the writers were intending that it was clearly based on this. Originally, the character was named Ian, which was funny, but then I guess they said, "Oh, forget it. Why don't we just name it Liam, since that's clearly what we're going for." So that gave me a lot to work with in terms of what the dynamic was. The story, my part of the story was basically 3 or 4 scenes, and it starts off with before they become famous, and they're buddies and they're best friends and they're brothers, and it's all new and it's all exciting. And so in that scene, it was it had to be all about the excitement, and clearly I'm the bad influence, he's trying to be a good altar boy, and I'm the one that's just all in it for the fame, he's all in it for the music, which is also based on the Noel and Liam Gallagher. I think they were both in it for the fame to a degree, but Noel was more interested in writing the music, and Liam was all just about partying and getting girls. So knowing that that's what they were going for, that sort of gave me a lot to work with.
I actually, I don't know, I'm not a huge music aficionado, so I actually didn't know that about Oasis. So you must have, you were looking at that and sort of studying that going in, and taking cues from that?
Well, I didn't have to study it because I was a huge Oasis fan, so okay. It wasn't anything I had to research, because I just happened to be a big fan in college of Oasis about 20 years ago when they were massively huge. And so it was clear the second I read the script that that's what this was based on, that this relationship was based on Liam and Noel, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, because I love everything about Brit pop. I love Blur, I love the Stone Roses, I love Oasis, I love all of that mid-90s Brit pop. So yeah, it was just sort of easy for me. Sometimes roles come along where you're just like, this is something, it's teed up for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's that's the question I want to ask then is because you're right. It's this. It's obviously a really hard story to watch. Going through scene by scene and seeing, Liam just pull Charlie further and further down this rabbit hole that he doesn't want to go down. But it does kind of seem at the beginning like they are best buddies. Charlie, when Liam says, "I'm your big brother. I'm always going to look out for you." Charlie obviously trusts him. They have a great bond. What do you think happens to Liam? I mean, how does he get to that point where he's just, doesn't really seem to care that much that he's, he's ruining Charlie's life?
Well, I mean, I think the drugs have a lot to do with it, the fame and the drugs. I think once I think the way they set it up was, if I'm not mistaken, and forgive me if I get a detail wrong because it's been a long time, but I think Charlie was sort of the front man, and then Liam took over and became the front man, which kind of happens a lot with bands. You'll have one guy that's sort of the brains behind the band and writes all the music and everything, but then there's somebody else that's like hot and sexy or whatever, and that's the one that everybody loves, and so the other band members get very jealous of that person because they're taking up all the attention. And so I think that had something to do with it, but also when you combine the scene and the drugs and all that, when people get hooked on drugs, they betray and hurt the people that are the closest to them. It doesn't matter if it's a brother or a sister or a friend. And so that's what happened. It's as Charlie started to become more resentful of the fact that Liam was taking the spotlight and hogging the spotlight more and was just sort of ignoring him. I think the rift started to come between them, and they were no longer he couldn't trust his brother anymore to look out for him.
I mean, you sort of showed up, here and there throughout the show. I think you were in a flashback in the first and the second and the third season.
Yeah.
And then you come back at the end. I mean, was that a weird experience to sort of be, there from beginning to end, but sort of dipping in and out just once in a great while?
Yeah, it was weird. Well, the first 3 seasons, like I had a pretty decent meaty role. Especially it sort of I joked my role got smaller every time I came back. So, as the show expanded and they added so many characters and so many storylines, and obviously after Charlie died, I knew that the chances of me coming back were very slim. But the first 3 seasons, I had some nice scenes, with Charlie and then they were, in the 6th season, it was really just cameos. I didn't have any lines in the finale. We were just on stage performing. Well, I had a little scene on stage, but it ended up getting cut. So many people had joined the show and then left the show, and Charlie hadn't been on Dom hadn't been on the show. So it was definitely interesting. It was an experience I'm definitely grateful for. But it was crazy being on a show where, do you know what a call sheet is in production?
No, I don't.
So you show up and they have a list of all the actors that are working that day. It's called a call sheet, and they have like the number 1 is like the star, and then it goes down the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they have the names of all the actors that are called that day. And on the finale, the day that I shot that concert scene, there were 76 names on the call sheet.
Oh man.
And I've never seen anything like that on any
took
show.
A picture of that.
I don't know if I did or not, but so just to give you an idea of the scope of how massive the show had become, it was crazy.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: what was it like to work with Dominic Monaghan?
Monaghan,
excuse me.
That's all right. It's not my name. He's it was fun. He was funny. He was a really funny dude, and we hit it off, and we had a lot of fun. We cracked each other up. We had the same sense of humor. We were into the same pop cultural stuff. We both loved Spinal Tap. We both loved Britpop. We both loved The Simpsons. We had the same sort of sense of humor. So there was a lot of laughing.
That's pretty lucky then that you were playing brothers, I guess.
Yeah, that really actually was good casting, because we definitely had a very quick and easy camaraderie, which you can't count on that necessarily. Dom and I just had a blast, in that first episode. We just, we got to shoot a concert scene in downtown Honolulu, and they had a lot of the members of the cast came and watched, and they had all these extras in the crowd, and we were up on stage perform, lip syncing to this track that they had pre-recorded, that was a lot of fun, and it was just that first episode, it was just a lot of fun scenes for an actor to get to do. And it was just right up my alley. It's the kind of stuff I love to do. And so that whole episode, that whole experience, and just working with Dom and just cracking each other up, like really, and also just being very committed to working with Jack Bender, the director, and just being very committed to making sure the moments were real and believable, and we got to really take a lot of time on that, more so than you do on other TV shows. So it was just the whole thing. I've been on probably 40 TV shows, and that was definitely like one of the best experiences I've had in terms of the people that I worked with and in terms of the material.
So last question, what have you been working on lately?
Well, lately I've been, my writing partner and I are trying to sell a series, a musical comedy series that we created called D-Sides, which we did 5 short episodes of it for True TV last year. And so we're trying to sell the series as a half-hour series right now. So it's a pretty epic, ambitious undertaking. And so we're just going around pitching that and trying to get our own show off the ground. So hopefully that'll happen soon.
That's really cool. Is this your first writing project, or have you written before?
I've written before. I've written a few pilots, and I wrote a pilot called Hit Factor, which we shot ourselves with my writing partner and I, and my wife, who's also an actress, and then we got James Cromwell to be in it. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. I know.
Yeah, so he was in it, and we shot it, and this was a few years ago, and then we entered it in the New York Television Festival, and we won Best Drama. So we've had some success with our writing. I usually write with partners. I do some stuff on my own as well. I make a lot of short films because I'm an editor as well. So I direct and I write and I edit. I can sort of do it from start to finish, which is cool. So that's what I really get passionate about, is creating my own work, whether it's this show or I'm about to actually direct a short film that I wrote, sort of a dark comedy about a con artist next month. So I'm really trying to focus on creating my own work right now. So that's what I'm working on.
Cool. Well, best of luck with the film and with D-Sides.
Thank you.
Neil Hopkins, he played Liam Pace on Lost. Neil, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you, man. My pleasure.
Okay, that story about him faking the British accent is hilarious.
It's pretty great. Didn't know the thing about Oasis either.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was so obvious. Like, I thought it was sort of drawn from that scene, but they were apparently actually based on a specific real band.
It's a good story. I'd forgotten how interesting the Charlie Liam story was. Well, thanks for listening in this week. We'll be back next week with Confidence Man, episode about Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Reading more from the essay that we discussed last week by Javier Guerrero-Marxwatch, but we've got some really cool interviews coming up as well. We'll be talking to Andrea Gabriel, who played Nadia, Saeed's long-lost love from Iraq, as well as William Maypother, who plays everyone's favorite frightening other, Ethan Rom.
Obviously, we have told you this many, many times, but you can call us at 9546 Dharma. Give us your hot takes, reactions to anything we say on the show. We'll play them the following week.
And shout out again to Chris from the Mittman Station, which I now know is the shape of Michigan.
So embarrassing for you.
It really is. Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen.
Yes, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thehatchpodcast. We are on Twitter at thehatchpodcast.
And please rate and review us on iTunes so people can find us.
See you next week.
Namaste.